Many people talk about freedom of speech, but are we willing to extend the right of free speech to those we disagree with? We'll ponder this next on the Constitution Study.
There's one thing you have to know wherever you make your stand. Came from a long through line of everyday Americans.
Hello there, everyday Americans. Paul Engel here with the Constitution Study, where we read and study the Constitution and we teach the rising generation to be free. I'm glad you could join me today. As always, head to the website, constitutionstudy.com. That's where you can find out all that I'm doing there, get past articles, videos, audio, find out where I'm speaking. Hey, you can even request me to come and speak at one of your engagements, one of your groups. I love answering questions. There's a spot to ask questions, have questions answered. I've thrown up a quiz. If you want to take the Constitution Study quiz, just go to constitutionstudy.com/quiz and give it a try. See how you're doing. I also want to thank everybody who helps spread the message of a free people. People are spreading the idea that we need to know our Constitution so that we know what our rights are, so we know how to protect them, how to defend them, how to assert them, and how to do so properly, which kind of leads me into this afternoon's discussion. You see, I get into a lot of discussions and debates on different social media platforms, and every once in a while I get into a debate that I think is worth pondering here on the video. And recently I was actually doing a Twitter debate with a gentleman I've known for many, many years, knew many, many years ago, and it really revolved around this idea of free speech. And the concern that we see today of how many people are defining speech as indefensible, that you're not allowed to say things, which to me I find very frightening. See, I understand there are certain concepts that I find utterly offensive. I find them ridiculous beyond the pale. But the question is, does that mean they don't have a right to be said? Now, the discussion in question dealt around white supremacists and whether or not someone with a white supremacist point of view had the right to speak it. And my point was always, to utter the ideas is constitutionally protected. The actions are not. And that's a very important distinction. See, just because I think someone should be allowed to say something doesn't mean I agree with what they say or that would condone actions along that line. But let me back up a little bit. Why is it so important that we protect the free speech rights of people we disagree with? And in fact, I'd say it's actually more important to protect the free speech rights of those we disagree with than the ones we do agree with, at least in general. And the answer is simple. If we don't grant free speech rights to people we disagree with, why would anybody grant free speech rights to us? Put another way, using this example of white supremacists, I think they're wrong. I think they're nuts. I think they are a stain on our society. But I don't want to shut them up, and there's a couple of very good reasons. You see, there are people out there who think what I do here is indefensible. The idea of teaching people what the Constitution actually says, beyond the pale. That believe some of my opinions are just unacceptable in modern society and that I, therefore, should be shut up. So if I'm going to give government the authority to shut down the speech of a group I disagree with, I'm also giving them the authority to shut down me and you and everyone else. Which is why the First Amendment says Congress shall make no law regarding the abridging of free speech. Close. The federal government is not allowed to do anything to impact the free speech of any individual. And notice I said Congress. But each state also has a free speech clause in its constitution. So each state protects the free speech rights. And we especially have to protect those of people we disagree with. You don't really need protection of speech that everybody agrees with. That's why I said it's almost more important that we protect the rights of those we disagree with, because no one really talks about protecting the rights that you agree with. There's a famous poem from Martin Niemöller that said, "First they came for the socialist, and I did not speak up because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists, but I didn't speak out because I wasn't a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I wasn't a Jew. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak out for me. See, that's the ultimate point. See, if we let government silence people we disagree with or just we're not involved with, sooner or later they're going to come for us, and there'll be no one to protect us. So I encourage you to, yes, you don't have to like what they say. In fact, there was a great saying, I may vehemently disagree with what you say, but I will defend to the death your right to say it. It's an important point that we must defend the rights of those we disagree with. You see, if we don't protect the rights of people we disagree with, if the right of freedom of speech only applies to those people we will accept, well then the constitutionally protected right of free speech isn't really protected now, is it? And if the right to free speech isn't protected, then the other rights aren't protected either. See, then we're no longer a nation of laws, we're a nation of men. See, whoever can get the most votes, rally the biggest crowd, basically make the biggest stink on social media, they get to make the rules. They get to decide who does and does not have rights and how they may be exercised. We don't have then the land of the free and the home of the brave. We have Antifa. We have colleges and universities where free speech rights are not only restricted, but now people are being shouted down. They're not being allowed the chance to speak. And if you really want free speech in many universities, they segregate you to a corner of the campus where no one can hear you. That's right. Free speech segregation. Yes, we should defend people's rights because they're rights and we should defend them. But let me put this another way. What is the proper reaction to speech we find indefensible, beyond the pale, unacceptable? Well, I say the answer is not less speech, but more speech. See, when I see people spouting off things like, in this example, white nationalists, my answer is not to shut them up, but to show by their own words just how stupid they are. By the way, I do the same with Supreme Court justices, politicians, pundits. I don't want to shut them up. Speak, you give me more fodder. I get more fodder from what people say by turning around and saying, well, okay, but what you're saying is ridiculous, and here's why, and here's my proof why you're wrong. So the answer to these indefensible speech is not less speech, it's more speech. And if you think about it, it's not just more speech, because if someone says something ridiculous and I want to counteract them with facts, I actually have to research and make sure my position is factually supported. See, far from being a stain on society, free speech, offensive speech, a speech that really should not be considered right in polite society, is a good thing. It's like an infection that you can't get rid of until you know it's there. You don't know that you need to put ointment on a cut until you actually feel the pain. You don't know that you might be sick until you actually feel bad. Well, we don't know that society may be sick until we hear people spouting stuff that makes us feel bad. And while that analogy isn't quite perfect, because there are times when you have to cut out the cancer, it is the free speech that lets you know that the cancer is there. And we deal with it by showing everyone else just how ridiculous that cancer is. So yes, protect the free speech rights of whatever group you find is beyond the pale. Recognizing A, either we have one standard for everybody or we're not equal, we're not free. B, it's a perfect opportunity to show everyone else just how wrong they are. And C, it's a perfect opportunity to double check your point of view and make sure that you've got the right position. So, what do you think? Again, this came from a side discussion. I did not give the person's name. I don't have their permission. You know who you are if you're watching the video. But that's my explanation of why it's important that we protect the free speech rights of people we disagree with. It is part of the idea of all men being created equal. That means we can be equally stupid. But if we're going to give people the authority to tell others, to shut other people up, we also give them the authority to shut us up. So put in the comments, let me know, what do you think? What examples have you seen where free speech has been, where speech has been abridged, free speech has been abridged that maybe shouldn't have? Or, what groups do you look at and say, maybe I need to let them speak, and my answer is not to shut them up, but to speak about how they're wrong? What do you think might happen to a nation where our freedom of speech is continually restricted, as we're seeing today? Now, this gets into a whole other category I might cover at a later date, where with social media and social justice and the attempts to, by non-governmental agencies, infringe on the freedom of speech of others. But today, I think I'll leave it here. So leave your comments below. Let me know what you think. If you've got articles that you'd like me to review, put them in the comments as well. If you have questions, if you think I got this wrong, put that in there. I'll read it, and I usually try to get the ones who think I got it wrong. I try to answer them first. Most of all, I hope it made you stop and think. See, too often we react, we emote, we don't stop and think. Think about how important the right to free speech is, and that it's so important that I protect it in others. And who knows? If you liked what you heard, I hope I'll see you again the next time on the Constitution Study. Have a great day.